Okay, what I'm doing. All right. My name is Dave Anderson. I'm a Straight Incorporated survivor from January 21st, 1978 to February of 1981. And I'm here with a guy I've known for a long time. We didn't meet in Straight Incorporated. We met sometime after. And this is Rich. And Rich is a good friend. And I'm glad you're with me, Rich.
I'm glad I'm here too, man. Thank you very much for thinking of me. And I'm always ready to reach out and help in any project like this. It's good to be here.
I appreciate that. What was the circumstance? When did you go into the program?
Okay. The day I entered the program was August 9th, 1982. The circumstances behind me arriving there they're not bizarre. I think they're pretty common for at least what had happened in my life. My parents were divorced when I was 9, and I started displaying. I was pretty pissed off. I was hurt. I didn't understand what was going on. So in my teenage years, prior, I guess 13 through 17 or whatever, a lot of stuff happened. I mean, I did a lot of drugs. I mean, I drank, I smoked weed almost every day. Quaaludes, Secanols, Tuanols, LSD, mushrooms. I did a lot. I was experimenting, in my opinion. I had gotten 2-3 major things that happened. Like when I was 16, went out with my buddies one night and I drank myself into it. That was weird. When I was 16 years old, I went out one night with my friends and I drank myself into a coma. And I woke up a couple days later in a hospital. They just pulled a respirator out. That was a major thing that really, I was living with my mother at the time, which immediately she sent me to live with my father because she couldn't deal. My father at that time, he lived in Texas. I went to high school there, and then his job changed. I got sent back to New Jersey, come back to New Jersey. I took some LSD. Just folks who may not be familiar with it, yeah, it's all ha-ha and hee-hee, and I get it, but more importantly, with psychedelics in general, is set and setting and how you're feeling. Of course, being naive, I didn't understand any of that stuff. And at least in my experience, LSD is, if you're in a bad mood or feeling sad, it will make you feel really sad. It'll make you feel very anxious. If you're in a better spot, it brings you to that. It accelerates whatever's going on in the subconscious and brings it to the surface. So I had really, really, really bad. I don't want to say it. I don't like to use the word bad trip. It was a difficult experience. It was frightening. And I wound up. My mother took me to the emergency room. Blah blah blah. And that was a big to do, and I got sent back down to Florida. Go down to Florida. I started really acting out in school at this point. So I began to feel like my parents didn't love me. I felt like I was being like rolled across the country like a rotten apple. You know what I mean? And that's where a lot of behavior problems came in. You know, I'd act out in class. They'd send me down to the office. And I'm going to give you a week's worth of detention. I'd be like, go fuck yourself. 5 days out of school. Thank you. And I'd walk right out. And I would do that repeatedly. I'd get back in 5 days, do the same thing, and get out. I was angry and pissed off when I was acting out. I was being a little fucking asshole, you know? But the last thing that really broke the straw of the camel's back is I did some more LSD. And I had another difficult experience. When I was moved back to my mother's, she called the police. The police came and arrested me, and I had, I don't know, a couple of hundred hits on me. And court ensued. Part of the deal with the court is I had to go to rehab. They didn't say straight. I just needed to be in counseling, is what they said. Counseling, like outpatient. You know what I mean? Well, my parents, came,
I understand.
they're 30s and 40s. Anything to do with drugs, anything to do with police was a great embarrassment to my family. They were already unplugging from me when I was younger. So that last time I was sometime, I guess it was 6 months before I wound up straight. My behavior got completely out of control. I wouldn't listen to my parents. You stay home, whatever, and I walked right out, So anyway, I get sent back down to Florida, which is par for the course. I didn't know what was really going on. My father worked for a guy, and he had sent his daughter to this straight place, right? So he told my father about it. My father there got the total nickel tour and was fed the line of bullshit that everyone's parent is taught. Bring your kid here, we'll fix him for you. So I get sent back down to Florida, but it was very odd. Like, my father rented a hotel room, and we stayed in a hotel room for a couple of days. And I'm like, why aren't we back at the house with him and his wife? Why aren't our back, but I had some questions. He's like, well, this is just the way it needs to work out for now. Basically, what the deal was, my stepmother absolutely disagreed with my father's decision. She was a native of Florida. Having gone to school there was always this specter in school about straight in Florida. People knew, even way back then. There was a guy named Mike. I'm not going to say his name just because it's not relevant, but there was a phaser who was in Dunedin High School with me. And I remember I saw he was doing notes in school, and inside the cover of his notebook was "I love myself. I love myself," like catty cornered all the way across the book. I know that would sound bizarre to most people, and it was bizarre. Who the hell does that? And I used to tease him. I knew he was in some place. I didn't really understand where he was at or what was going on, or why he was doing it. But he was an easy target. Was I a bully? No. But was I someone that would bust your balls? All the time. Wasn't trying to start anything. So anyway, we were in this hotel for a couple of days, and my father said, all right, today, which happened to be my birthday, my 18th birthday, the day of my 18th birthday, we're going for family counseling. And I'm like, okay, cool. And I had a feeling that I was probably going to get I had a feeling, I didn't even know the word for it then, but I know it now, that there was going to be intervention or something where I would be confronted about my behavior. And I was down with it. And I thought, well, maybe this could help in some weird way. I don't know. So my father takes me down US 19 toward St. Pete. I can't say I was familiar with that part of US 19 other than shooting down to St. Pete Beach to hang around. I mean, that was it, really. And then he took a road off of there, and Gandy Boulevard. I'd never really been on Gandy Boulevard before. And he took a turn off of that onto Frontage Road. And I'm like, I knew where it was. It was odd because right behind it was a big plot of land owned by Sperry. And people used to dirt bike back there. My friends used to do it all the time. And, I drove past that building 50, 60, 70 times. It just was this odd warehouse in the middle of, palmetto fucking, those big ass things, those spines will cut you to death. Whatever, it's a warehouse. So we pull into the parking lot, and I'm like, wow, this is a pretty big office, I was thinking to myself. And I walked in the door, and there was this little reception area with brown paneling. The room was kind of dark. They had fluorescent lights. I thought it was odd. The reception looked like a church cafeteria lady, and I realized now is one of the moms dating her child. Just didn't. There was something off, She looked like she should have been doing something different besides answer questions and stuff. And I'm sitting in there, and Ruth came into the room. That's Miller Newton's wife. And we all stood up, My father greeted her. We all stood up, My father greeted her. And she said, well, Rich, I'm going to go and talk to your father for a little while, and you're going to go here with these guys. And I didn't really think anything of it. But as I was walking down this little hallway, I noticed there was, you ever see these plaques in businesses? Thank you for donating your 10th run or whatever. But there was a couple of those that straight incorporated. And my heart leapt into my fucking throat. I'm like, holy shit. I'm at that fucking place that everyone talks about. The place people disappear for years and they come out and their hair's cut all funny and they're white as hell and, they're geeks and they won't talk to anybody. I'm like, what the fuck? So I get into, they put me in this little room. It really was like a walk-in. It was a walk-in closet-sized room. And I believe walked in and they pointed to the chair, which was, across the room, and I sat down. They closed the door and pulled 3 chairs across the room, and I sat down. My father absolutely warned them that I will react. There was 3 guys, like, huge phasers in there. And as soon as I sat down and I adjusted myself and looked, I said, okay, this is a setup. I'm not getting out of this room. As soon as I sat down and I adjusted myself and looked, I said, okay, this is a setup. I'm not getting out of this room. They started asking me a series of questions. They're the typical odd ones. You ever extra the dog? There was some weird stuff, and then there was, stuff about the drugs you did. There was some weird stuff. And truth be told, I didn't have to lie. I didn't lie at all. I told them exactly what I'd been doing. I had nothing to hide. I didn't think I was a drug addict. I was some other schmo having fun, really. That led me up to getting inside of the intake room.
When these folks were in front of you, and Ruth was her name, and Ruth had left, did you start to get any kind of fix on the personality of what was going on around you?
Pardon me, could you say that again? I'm sorry. Could you say that again?
Did you have a feel for the staff? Did they seem like good folk?
I didn't really interact with any staff. At that point.
Right.
When they brought me into group, it was the oddest thing. They warned me, say, hey, look, this is how we do things here. They went through a series of questions. You're a druggie. I'm like, whatever, okay. And right at that moment, I'm a pretty smart kid. I knew the only way out of that place was in. I was not going to be taxed. I was not going to be chased through the woods. I knew right at that moment to fight my way out of there, I would probably not win. There were 3 of them, 1 of me, and a whole room full of others would come out and grab me. My first interaction with the staff was in St. Petersburg, or the Gandhi building, whatever you want to call it. The group was massive. There was 350 kids in that room, and it was hot as balls. There's no thing as air conditioning. This is not an open meeting night. I remember they walked me up the hallway. I even said it the last time I was interviewed, and there was these fluorescent lights, and it was like light to dark, light to dark, light to dark. We sped up, and they walked me up the middle of the group, and here's this guy holding me by my belt loop, and which I completely did not like. And thank God they warned me about it, or else I definitely would have grabbed my deck. Are you out of mind? Well, just saying, But when they walked me up that group, there was a girl on the girl's side talking, and she was crying and carrying on. And every head was looking right at her. But as I walked up that row, I noticed as I looked around, their eyes weren't looking at that girl. They were looking at me. It was the oddest thing. They were looking, but and they said, hey, everyone, this is Rich Morosky. He thinks he has a drug problem. What do you have to say? Hi, Rich, love you, Rich. And about maybe jumped the hell out of my skin. I didn't expect that, because you got to figure with 350 kids who are playing the game, trying to get the fuck out of that shithole. It's, of course, everyone's enthusiastic about it. And if you're not enthusiastic about it, you could be on the spotlight. I get it now. But then it was very nerving. I'm like, what the fuck is that? The big thing that I noticed about staff right at that moment was this. A, they had complete control over that group. For one of the first times ever, I walked in from the back. Normally, when we would get there, in the morning or whatever, you just came in the back door. You never really got to see what was going on behind you while you were in group. There was no adults there. There was some kid at this little desk furiously scribbling into a notebook. There's probably a fifth phaser doing fifth phaser obs, the obs book, the way that they would rat on us, themselves, anybody. And it was definitely a rat on culture. They wanted you to do that stuff. But anyhow, everyone in that room was white. I mean, this is Florida, bro. Everyone has a tan in Florida. It just, by virtue of living there, you get one. It's just the way it works. And that was very stark to me. But the staff member, I remember one of them, very, very beautiful girl, lovely hair. I mean, she looked great, tan, looked well. And everyone else is like really pale. But something else I noticed as they walked me up that row to put me on front row, seat 1, which is a place you never want to return to while you're in straight. Trust me. As I walked, everyone had their feet tucked in underneath the chair. And their sneakers looked brand new. Like every single person, the tread on the bottom of their shoes were like they just pulled them off the shelf. And I don't know why I noticed that, but it was just, what the fuck is this? And they sat me down, and that's how it worked. It was a Friday night, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And then Friday night open meeting occurred, which was surreal. I was not prepared for that. For folks who don't know, this is when they turn the chairs around in group, all 350 kids face the rear of the room, which never happens normally. And then in front of you are countless rows that are like, we're talking like 30 chairs wide and maybe 15, 20 rows back. And you look over there and there's all these old people. And I quickly figured out this is where the parents And they had this bizarre system where they had a kid who had on a mechanics creeper, if you know what that is. It's a little chair that mechanics use that have wheels on it. And he had a microphone. Mm-hmm. And he'd hand it off to a parent. The parent would say, Susie, and they'd stand up and they'd start talking in the microphone. And more times than not, the parents were very combative to the children in this huge room. And they would say all kinds of really horrible stuff. Some of it may have been true. I think some of it may have been persuaded out of them to be presented in this way. And that was my first introduction to Dr. Miller Newton. Was that never seen him before? Mm-hmm. They passed the microphone along, and I didn't know. I was like, this is insane. Like, this is like, am I in the Twilight like film type thing? This is like, am I in the Twilight Zone? Like my parents, and usually, just for people who don't know, who weren't straight, the parents were able to say whatever the fuck they wanted, whether it was true, false, made up, sincere, loving, or go fuck yourself. Seriously, I've heard that in there. And the only thing that the children could respond, or the phasers, the people in the program could say, was love you, mom, love you, dad. If you tried to intonate any other words than that, there was an immediate, swift, brutal reaction at that moment. You yanked down into your chair, you really misbehaved, into the bathroom you would go. But when it got to me, my father got up there and he started, I'll never forget the one line. today is your birthday, son. It's your 18th birthday. And I wanted to give you the greatest gift I ever could. And it's ironic. I know where his heart was at, but I would have preferred a car. You know what I mean? So that's basically what happened. I mean, I just want to talk a little about Miller Newton. The Dog and Pony Show this guy put on for the parents was astounding. I was impressed by, like, oh, all right, here's the guy. And he wasn't mean to anybody that night anyway. That changed over the next couple of years, or the time that I was in Florida, directly under his eye, so to speak. There was other things that happened, but that night it was very calm. But when it got to me, my father started speaking stuff, and I did not follow suit with "Love you, Mom, love you, Dad." I stood up and I just pointed at him, like, and really at that moment, going through my mind was, if I could get my fucking hands on you, if I could get my fucking hands on you. I was so angry and betrayed, abandoned, confused, frightened. I here on top of all this, I'm scared out of my fucking mind.
Right.
I mean, like panicky. Like the only way the best way to describe that feeling is, have you almost ever gotten into a car wreck? You know, where you're like, and you hold your breath and it doesn't happen. That's the night I held my breath and I held it for.
Yeah.
I felt that. I held it. I felt that. Abject. I'm going to use a phrase that from Jim Morrison. Jim Morrison said it well. Mute nostril agony. The agony of that moment. And I can feel it now just talking about it. Yeah, it happens from time to time. I'll experience things from there, feelings. Not quite as acute as it was years past. But when I stood up and slammed into the chair, open meeting review was an absolute. I was the blue plate special that night, baby. Let me tell you what. The fucked up part though, I didn't know. I mean, they stand me up and I'm like, what? And all these people I never met before started screaming at me. I don't remember specifics, but this went on for quite some time. Quite some time for me at that point was like 10 or 15 minutes, which I know is minuscule. Like normally confrontations could take hours or would span the entire day for certain people. This knowledge came later, but at that moment it seemed like a lifetime. 10 or 15 minutes is really nothing in an open meeting review. I was frightened. I was confused. I was a typical teenager. People pick on me or do stuff like that to me. My first initial reaction is, I'm going to punch your fucking lights out. How do you punch out 350 kids? So that was my introduction rate that very first day. Damn question.
You were talking about Miller Newton.
Oh yeah.
Miller Newton was he was the top cheese. He ran the show at the time you were there.
Oh yes, indeed. Miller Newton. Miller Newton. When I first got there, Dr. Newton, as we were only allowed to call him, his whole name at that time was Virgil Miller Newton. Dr. Virgil Miller Newton. Forgot the question, Dave. I'm just, there's so many things spinning through my head. I'm not confused or anything, but I got lost for a second. What was your question again? Forgot the question, Dave. There's so many things spinning through my head. I'm not confused or anything, but I got lost for a second. What was your question again? What was your question, Dave?
I was wondering if you could elaborate and talk about Miller Newton a little bit.
Sure. I sure can. Well, when I got there, he was program director. like for St. Pete. That was his job, and he had a son in there. His name was Mark. He wasn't such a bad guy. I guess that's relative to your. That was weird.